Hallelujah. Hallelujah. All right. We got the shofar blowers. Hallelujah. I heard y'all, I hope y'all heard it out there. Psalms 81 and 3. It says, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast days. For this was a statute for Yasharel, a law of the Elohim of Jacob. So we're blowing the shofar. This is the first day of a new month. It's the new moon. When you have a new moon, it's a new month. So I think that's my. We're gonna have to get rid of that. Let's see. Come on, come on, come on. Why isn't it? Well, so we're grateful unto the Most High for today, a new month. We've got another new moon, so we blow the shofar in the new moon, and every time we come together is a solemn feast. Shabbat, solemn feast, our feast days. It's a solemn feast. He tells us in Hebrews 10:25 that we're not supposed to forsake the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. And those were the times that they would assemble themselves together. They would assemble on the new moon. They would assemble on the Shabbats. They would assemble on the feast days. And so when it says that in Hebrews 10:25, and I know a lot of people like to extrapolate that out of Hebrews 10:25 and say and use that for all purposes, but that's not what it was meant. When it was written unto the Hebrews, this is when the Hebrews would gather. This is not a Greek book. It's not a Roman book. It is not an Egyptian book. This is a book for it's a Hebrew book given unto a Hebrew nation, where the El Elyon made a covenant with Abraham and said, "I'm going to be your Elohim." He made that covenant with Abraham. He made the covenant with Yishak and with Jacob. And from Jacob, you have a nation called Yasharel, because he changed his name. He changed his name from Jacob to Yasharel. And so, speaking unto Yasharel, making a covenant with them from Mount Sinai or Mount Horeb, he made a covenant. He entered into a covenant with a nation, and it was pretty much spoken, and even before Israel became a nation, what he was going to do, because he told Abraham that his seed was going to be like the sand by the seashore and like the stars in the heaven. That was going to be his seed. And at one time, Abraham said, well, how am I going to have that many seed when I don't even have a son? And he was looking at Eliezer in his house, who was his hired servant. He says, oh, no, you're going to have a son. And so the promise given unto Abraham, and then the covenant unto Abraham, Yishak, Jacob, a covenant unto Yasharel. And so this is a book of covenants. It's a book given unto a people that he had chosen. He had chosen them. And in Isaiah chapter 44 and verse number 1 and verse number 2, yet now hear, O Jacob, my servant, and Yasharel, whom I have chosen. And I don't know why people get it why there is conflict and why there's misunderstanding. And a lot of times there's misunderstanding because we're blind. We don't see. And so we can read it right here in the book here, and then somebody can come around and says, no, he is for the Gentile church. He's the Elohim for the Gentile church. He made a covenant with the Gentile church. He chose the Gentile church. But you won't find that anywhere. You won't find that. That's from philosophers. That's through the philosophy of Rome and the philosophy of Greek. Because in the Hebrew canon, the Hebrew text, he says, Jacob, my servant, and Yasharel, whom I have chosen. So if it's going to come down in your life as we march closer to the end here. It's going to come down in your life, each and every one of you individually, and those who are listening in. And we certainly welcome all of you who are listening in across the nation, and those who are picking this up at their convenience. Those who are picking it up live, we say shalom to you, and we welcome you to the house of Yah. But it's going to come down to each and every one of you. It's going to come down to, do you believe what the Most High Yah has spoken, or are you going to believe the philosophy of men? And in the book of Colossians, Shaul, they call him Paul, Shaul warned us about the philosophy of men. He warned us about the philosophy of men because Shaul was somebody that studied the philosophers. He studied them, and we see that in the 17th chapter of Acts. He says, even your own poets, your own philosopher have said this, and then in Titus, he quotes Epimenides and Titus, so he knew the philosophers of his day and those who predated him. He knew them, and he warned us, be careful of the philosophy of men, and that is exactly what has crept into the whole belief structure around. Somebody else is tied to this speaker now because my phone is off, so it ain't me. Anyway, hopefully it's not too disturbing. But so it's going to come down to, are you going to believe the Most High Yah, or are you going to believe what man has saying? Because when you can read it in the book and you say, oh, no, that's not what it means, that's not what. Didn't Elyon say, these words have gone out of my mouth, and they will not return unto me what? Void. They ain't coming back to me void. This is what I spoken. He spoke it and says, Yasharel, whom I have chosen. Thus saith Yahuwah that made thee and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Yaakov, my servant, and thou Yasharel. Who's? Okay. Can you on here? I think you can take streaming off there. I think there's a right here on the back. The Most High Yah. Let's listen to his witness, and he has something for everybody. He has something for everybody, and he not only did he redeem Israel with his only begotten Son, but because of their rejection of him, of the only begotten Son, and I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about the nation as a whole, because of the rejection of him, of the Son of Elohim, then he opened it up to other nations. And he knew in his foreknowledge, right? In his foreknowledge, he knew that Yasharel was going to reject him. But I want to go to Deuteronomy chapter 4, start at verse number 6. And he says, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Now, they're going to say that Yasharel is a wise and understanding people if they have wisdom and understanding. Like he says, for this is your wisdom. What is the wisdom? The wisdom of Yasharel is being able to fear Yahuwah Elohim and keep his commandments, the statutes and everything that he gave them to, because he speaks it before. I mean, we're in verse number 6, but he speaks it here. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. So when other nations are looking at us, and this is how it should be, when they look at us, they should say, surely this is a great nation, a wise and understanding people. Are they saying that of you? In your neighborhood, in your hood, on your block, on your job, on your occupation, in the classroom, in the schoolhouse, wherever you are they saying this about you? Oh, wow, this is a wise and understanding people. Or are they saying you knuckleheads? You stiff-necked. Man, y'all hard-headed. Man, y'all, some things that I hear, man, y'all, you're prone to violence. You're so aggressive. No self-esteem. Prone to violence. Just want to kill. Just want to rob. And it's almost like, you see us walking down the street, and all of a sudden folks get scared. Am I going to get robbed? Am I going to get shot? Are they going to jump me? And women might think, is he going to rape me? I mean, that's just right off the top of their head, right off the top of people's head when they see y'all. That's not how he intended it to be. He says, in the sight of these nations, all these other people should be saying, man, y'all some wise and understanding people. Even when they look at our households and they look at the man in the house and the woman in the house, then they look at the children. Has it ever been said about you? Man, your children are so well behaved. Man, how do you get your children to sit there so attentive like that for so long? I sit my child down in 5 minutes, he didn't tore the whole table up. I mean, what are they saying? Because see, we ought to be, and we'll get into that, we are the example. And it even says that in Romans, the 8th chapter, 19th verse, it talks about how the world is waiting for the manifestations of the sons of Yah. I mean, and we should be bearing that light, but so many of us are trapped in religions. But he said that. He said, you'll find my people in wood and stone. He said, you'll be worshiping wood and stone. Didn't he say that? He said that. In Exodus, he said it in Deuteronomy, he said it in Leviticus, he said it in Ezekiel, and I'm trying to think some of the other prophets, but he said that you would find his people in wood and stone. When his people as a nation should be a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there, and this is verse number 7, for what nation is there so great who hath Elohim so nigh unto them as Yahuwah our Elohim is in all things that we call upon him for. I mean, you have to. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that Abba Yahuwah Elohim El Elyon is nigh unto you to where he'll hear your voice? You have his ear, and that's how it should be. And we've been praying. We're praying for our Zakim. We're praying for Emal Carruthers. We're praying for Akoti Tiffin and some of the other ones. I believe Yah hears my cry when I cry out unto him. When I ask him, in all sincerity, and I'm cutting away, breaking from everything, and I'm zoning in. I want to zone in, cut the distractions, put the dog in the doghouse, put the kids up, whatever. I want to zone in now because I know that he's going to listen to my cry and my prayer. And we are a witness unto other people. Because the nation is going to say, man, there's no nation like y'all that has El Elyon as your Elohim. Ain't no other nation like that that's got Yahuwah. And verse number 8, and what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day? And here comes a religion in to tear down his laws, statutes, and commands. And that's what makes you so great. That's what makes you. In fact, a lot of other nations take our book and put it in their government and keep some of the statutes and laws of our book and then tell you, you ain't under no law. How is that? And we take it. And a lot of times we take it because when you're blind and you don't know and there's not the revelations there, you just do it. And Yahusha said, if the blind lead the blind, they all gonna end up in a ditch. And so we got blind leaders, blind guides, and the people are blind. Because when you look at this Torah, nobody should be able to turn you away from his commands, his laws, and his statutes. Because these are oracles. Because when Yah speaks from the Shamaim, those are oracles. They're coming down. It's instructions and everything coming down from the Shamaim. He says you didn't see no similitude of anything. Remember we read that the other day? There was no similitude. All you heard was a voice. And that was those oracles that came down. And then verse number 9, only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently. Keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. But teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. So you have the generational, that is a command. Any household where the father is not teaching the sons or teaching the next generation is breaking commands. You're to teach in the household. That is a command from the Most High Yah. And what do? I'm going to send them off. Somebody else teach them. Y'all teach them. I'm going to send them to Sunday school. I'm going to send them to parochial school. I'm going to send them to, what are some of those other border schools where they have, it's of a religious nature. I don't know what they call them, but I'm sending you off to that and learn about God. I mean, that's what you're breaking commands. He puts the responsibility in every household. Every household, he puts that responsibility. Teach it. This is a command. And we see this also in Deuteronomy 6th chapter. He tells us. And so our children, their greatest role model should be their father and their mother. Those should be the role models. Not Lil Wayne. Not Jay-Z. Not Michael Jordan. I mean, we're talking about people got a lot of money, right? LeBron James. And it seems like the people that we gravitate to and we look up as idols and stuff are entertainers. We don't look to scholarly men that, Grover Washington, was that his name? Or Carver Washington, who was an engineer. I mean, Iowa State University, I couldn't believe when we went up there to visit, and they have so much of the information about him, the teaching of him, and what he brought to Iowa State University. I mean, he's all up there. Anybody been there, Ames, Iowa State University, and seen that? George Carver Washington. I think that's his name. Yeah. And everything that he was able to accomplish, and then, but we don't see too many people looking at him as, hey, man, I want to, maybe learn about engineering, try to be like that. We want to be like Mike. And they make it so attractive, don't they, though? I mean, the Gatorade, the commercials, the real hip music, and I want to be like Mike. And he's dunking and flying all over. And then we get shirts and hats, be like Mike. And our kids, our sons see it. And then, but the role model in the home should be the father. The role model in the home should be the mother. That's the responsibility that we have. All of us who are fathers and mothers, so that when you teach your children and they grow up, they know the responsibility they have in their home. Because it was never supposed to be lost. But we see a lot of times there's no father in the house. And some of that is social engineering, because I've been at the point of that spear. I know exactly what it was like. And I think y'all know I've shared that story with you before, but a lot of it is social engineering. But the responsibility that we have. And so he's chosen Yasharel. He's chosen Yasharel. Let's go to, I want to look at some things that our Messiah, because sometimes people want to, what did Yahusha say? A lot of times we want to go to, what does Yahusha say? What does he think about all of this? And then the teachings of our Messiah in the time of his ministry. And he didn't have a very long ministry, but it was very effective because he had the words of life. Because Yahusha was the walking Torah. It says, the word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld, what that generation in his day, and he had a short ministry, but in the first century, that generation seen something that none of us have seen since. The very Son of Yahuwah. A body was made. He even said a body was prepared for me. And the Ruach dwelled in that body. And he says, lo, I come in the volume of the book. It is written of me. Anybody who missed it in his generation, they ain't going to get, I don't think they're going to get it. Now we're looking from where we are to in the past, and we hear a lot of things, and we're standing on the shoulders of generations and centuries and millenniums. We're standing on their shoulders. But to be there at that time and witness it, but even when he was there at that time, a lot of people still didn't believe him. They still didn't believe him. That's why they had him killed. They didn't believe him. He said, when that one time they tried to stone him, he says, why are you trying to stone me? For what work? He says, we don't stone you for a good work, but you being a man claiming yourself to be Elohim. And he says, you're mad at me because I said I'm the son of Elohim? So it's miraculous and beyond comprehension what the Most High Yah has done when he made a human body through Mary, and then the Ruach was in that body, and he said he had the spirit without measure. Because I don't believe Mary gave birth to God. Now, some people might think Mary gave birth to God. I don't believe that. She gave birth to a boy like all mothers do now, but Joseph wasn't the father. The Ruach overshadowed her. It even says that. The Ruach overshadowed her, that holy thing in you. Yes. Right. If she gave birth to him, there's a beginning, and it even says the word was made flesh. I mean, it was, he was in that flesh. Torah was in that flesh. Even Shaul says Elohim was manifested in the flesh. It didn't say he was flesh. He was manifested in the flesh. And so never before in the history of man, this is just a wonderful, beautiful thing. And sometimes just beyond comprehension. But the words, sometimes people say, well, I don't believe nothing unless Yahusha says it. If Yahusha says it, then I believe it. But you got to understand now, everything that was prophesied about him, that goes way back. What he was coming and what he was going to do and the redeeming of Yasharel. And that was, so you can't do away with the Torah and the covenant that was made with Yasharel because Yahusha came on the scene. And that's what a lot of people want to do. They want to cut that covenant. He's no longer under covenant to Yasharel because Yahusha come on the scene. And so now that Yahusha's here, everything comes through Yahusha. There's truth to that. But just like we learned the other day what syncretism is, you know what syncretism is? I think we pulled that word up. And syncretism is the amalgamation or the mixing of religious beliefs. You have your belief, you got your belief, I got my belief. Let's bring them all together. We'll make one religion. And that's what syncretism is, and that's what Christianity is. But there's only one way that Yahuwah did this, and that was through his only begotten son, Yahusha. And so for us to be redeemed and to get back into covenant with the Most High Yah, because that's where we want to be. We don't want to lose out. I don't want to die and not be under covenant with him. I want that blood covering me. I want to be under covenant with him. And so we know that it comes through Yahusha HaMashiach. But listening to the words of Yahusha, he says, and this is Matthew 5:14, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Now, who's he talking to? Well, he's talking to the southern kingdom at this time, because when he came into the world, the northern kingdom had already been scattered. The northern kingdom had already been scattered, so you got the southern kingdom now, which consisted of the tribe of Yehuda, the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribe of Levites, because their priests were still there in the land, because you couldn't offer a sacrifice or do oblation, or a sacrifice for sure. I had to check on oblation, but you couldn't do a sacrifice without the Levites, a priest, and you couldn't do it on the altar of the temple. If you was of the tribe of Judah, you couldn't go to the altar of the temple and offer up a sacrifice. Oh no, you was blaspheming. That might even cost you your life. So it had to be done by the priests and by the Levites. So you had the priests and the Levites that were still there in Jerusalem. And so when he's speaking here, he's saying, ye are the light of the world. You could go back to Isaiah, and it prophesied in Isaiah that Yasharel was going to be a light unto who? The Gentiles. Yasharel was going to be a light unto the Gentiles. That's why he said in Deuteronomy, when these other nations look at you, they're going to say, wow, you guys are a wise and understanding people. Hey, ain't no other nation around here got El Elyon that they can call on that's so close to them. No other nation could do that. We got an example of that, right, with Elijah. When those prophets from Baal, and they was calling on Baal, and they was cutting themselves up, and he was just waiting for them. Is he going to show up? Is he going to show up? And then he called on the Most High Yah. Here comes fire down from the Shamaim and burned all of that up. And then he got rid of all those prophets. The Baal prophets died. And so that's why, you guys got the Most High Yah that y'all can call on, so close to you, so dear to you. And you have his ear, and you don't call on him. There's a lot of other nations wish they was y'all. That's why y'all in the condition you're in now. And we don't even know. We don't even consider. I don't even want to consider it. Hey, bro, we Yasharel. I don't even want to consider it. It was prophesied. You won't even consider that who you are. He says, an ox knows his owner, but Yasharel don't. A donkey knows his master's crib, Yasharel don't. He said, my people won't even consider. And y'all, I see that scripture come to life so many times, because you can talk to people, they don't even consider it. They don't even consider it. And it just lets you know prophecy is fulfilled. He spoke it, so it's going to be fulfilled. But he does have a people. So notice he says here, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. So he's telling them, let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Shamaim, which is in heaven. Right? Is that what it says? And I glorify your Abba. What did I say? Okay. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Abba, which is in the Shamaim. So your understanding of Torah, your understanding of, and I'm going to say the law, statutes, and commands, because we're going to go on and see what Shaul wrote. But your understanding of it and then keeping it is your good works. Keeping it is your good works. And he says, when you do this, you glorify your Abba, which is in the Shamaim. So by me being faithful to the covenant, and the covenant that he cut with Yasharel, he cut 10 commandments with Yasharel. Well, what about all the other statutes and precepts was to support those 10 commandments. And then Yahusha says, because they asked him, what is the greatest of the law, right? What is the greatest commandment? He says, thou shalt love Yahuwah with all thy heart, mind, body, soul, and strength. Him only shalt thou serve, and thou shalt love your neighbor as yourself. On those 2 commands hang all the law and the prophets. And so when you look at the 10 commandments, you look at love your neighbor as yourself, everything he writes as far as this is a precept, this is a statute, is to support those 10 commandments. It's to support your love unto. Yahusha says, if you love me, and this is Torah made flesh, he says, if you love me, keep my commandments. That's if you love me. So you can't be a commandment breaker or a law breaker and then say, oh, how I love him, and you just breaking commandments. He doesn't. We measure our love a lot of times through favoritism. You know, if somebody shows me favor or shows me attention, they must love me. Why? Well, they look at all the attention. They're so affectionate. And a lot of times that's how we measure love. But the Most High Yah, the way he measures love is through your obedience. Because he says to obey is better than to sacrifice. And to hearken than the what is it? And it talks about the rams, right? And that's yeah, and that's dealing with your sacrifices and everything, because you would give your offering unto him, you know, because all of the offerings unto him weren't for sin. There was just, you know, certain offerings that were given unto him just out of your obedience, out of your thankfulness. There's a lot of things that was given unto him. All of the sacrifices and everything wasn't for sin. It wasn't all for sin. He did have some sin. But anyway, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. We are the light. And so what are we supposed to show forth? Just like he said unto them, we have to show forth the law, statutes, and commands of. So I want to go to, because here, this is what a lot of people. Well, we'll just break this into 2 parts. Okay, Galatians 5, and I'm going to start with verse 16. Galatians 5, verse 16. Because and what I want to say and try to get across to you is a lot of people sever Shaul's teachings from Torah. They like to sever his teachings from the law, statutes, and commands. And we're going to get into Paul, but just to kind of build Paul up here. Let's build Paul up a little bit. Acts chapter 24 and verse number 14. Acts 24:14. We're going to go back to Galatians. Because I don't want us to think like the Roman Christian church thinks, that Paul's teaching was severed and different from what Moses taught the children of Israel. Because that's what a lot of people like to do. Well, you're talking about Israel and the children of Israel and their covenant. We're talking about Yahusha, and Paul taught us how to live under Yahusha and everything. But the material that Shaul used and what Shaul believed was right there in Torah. So it says here in Acts 24:14, but this I confess unto thee. Now this is his confession. This is Shaul's confession, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Elohim of my fathers. So who do you think he was worshiping? Well, he's worshiping the Most High Yah. That's what he says here. So worship I the Elohim of my fathers. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. In fact, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob only knew him as El Shaddai. He didn't give his proper name until they was getting ready to come out of Egypt. And he gave it to who? Musha. And he told Musha, he said, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they knew me as El Shaddai. They didn't know me by Yahuwah. You're going to know me by Yahuwah. And then it goes on. It goes on to say in Exodus 15, verse number 3, I think it is, Yahuwah is a man of war. And I know a lot of times we kind of, Most High Yah is, he can't execute judgment on unrighteous nations and unrighteous people if you don't see that side of him. Because a lot of times the only side we want to see of him is that smiling face. Mercy and grace, compassion. That's all we want to see. But when you understand Torah and the law, the weightier matter of the law is judgment, mercy, and faith. That's the weightier matter of the law. So Shaul says, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way which ye call heresy, so worship I the Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. He did not do away with anything that was in the law or the prophets. So this mindset that I'm going to follow Shaul's teachings, because you hear that in the Roman religion. I'm going to follow Shaul's teaching because he was the apostles unto the Gentiles. I'm going to follow his teaching. I'm not going to follow the teachings of Moses. But he says, believe in all things which are written in the law and the prophets. Now, another verse that I want to use to back this up is in Acts chapter 28 and verse number 23. Acts 28 and 23. And when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him into his lodging, to whom he expounded and testified the kingdom of Elohim. And the kingdom of Elohim is dealing with eternal life. It testified the kingdom of Elohim, persuading them concerning Yahusha, both out of, the law of Moses and the prophets, from morning to evening. So when people say, Shaul, I'm going to break from the law and Moses, I'm going to break from that, I'm going to follow Shaul because his teachings are in the new, Moses' teachings are in the old. What Shaul used to teach was the law of Moses. He understood the law of Moses. He used the law of Moses. He read it, he understood it, and he started to teach and build the kingdom out of that. Because if you want to know what righteousness is, you better look at the law. The law teaches righteousness. You got to look at the righteousness if you want to know what the law is. So when people say that Yahusha came to break us from the law, that is a misinformation and an untruth. He did not break us. Well, actually, it's kind of one thing that Yahusha did was he paid the penalty for your offense against the law. That's what he did. He paid the penalty for your sins. So you don't have to die the death, and especially the second death, because you're breaking the Torah. He paid the price for that. He even said he tasted death for every man. He went down into the prisons, which, where souls were in prisons, and preached unto them. In that period when he was in the grave, he went into another dimension and preached unto those souls in the prisons. He took that second death so we don't have to. That's the part of the law, because there's laws that says once you break that law, death. So he paid the price of that, not for you to keep breaking the law, but that you can go and sin no more. And so that's what Shaul taught. Shaul was teaching the righteousness that is in the law. He was teaching the righteousness of it. He didn't break from it at all. Okay, so I want to go to Galatians because there is a little confusion. In Romans and Galatians, there's a little confusion because a lot of people think that there is no law now. We're not under the law. You can do whatever you want to do. That's just not the case. And so in Galatians 5:16, this I say then, walk in the Ruach, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the lust of the flesh, for the flesh lusteth against the ruach, and the ruach against the flesh, and these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. Now, what is he talking about here? What are the two elements, the two principal things he's talking about here? He's talking about the flesh and the spirit. He's talking about the ruach and the flesh. Those are the things that he is talking about, the ruach and the flesh. And he tells us we have to walk in the ruach. And we're going to see more of that, but walk in the, because if I'm walking in the ruach, if I'm mining the things of the ruach, then I'm not going to fulfill my flesh. So, because the ruach, the flesh lusts against the ruach, and the ruach against the flesh, and these are contrary one to another, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. Now, this verse, but if ye be led of the ruach, ye are not under the law. And so a lot of people say, I hope he reads that verse. Come on, let's see that. Bring that one out. Because it says, if I'm led by the ruach, ye are not under the law. And that's why Shaul was telling Timothy, you have to rightly divide the word of truth. You just have to rightly divide it. You have to know when Shaul is speaking here and what he's talking about, you have to know what he's talking about. You can't just make a blanket statement of, see, there's no law. He's talking about the law of Moses. We ain't under the law of Moses. Oh, wait a minute. So let's go to see what he says in Romans. Romans chapter 7 and verse number 12. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just, and good. So, wait a minute, Paul. I thought you said, you mean we're not under that which is holy, that which is just, that which is good? We're not under that? That's not what he was saying. In Galatians, he's not saying you're not under that. But what is he saying then? Was then that which is good made death unto me? Speaking of the law, the Torah, is that made? Elohim forbid. But sin, because sin is what? The transgression of the law. So he's saying the law is not bad or evil, because he says here, was then that which is good made death unto me? Elohim forbid. But sin, it's not the law, it's because you keep breaking the law. That's why death comes. But sin, that it might appear sin. I got to show you what sin is. Sin is the transgression against Yahuwah's law. Working death in me by that which is good, that sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. And that's why we read the 10 Commandments. We should know it by heart, to the point where if I break one of those and I have the knowledge of it and I break it, it's exceeding sinful. Because there are sins of ignorance. I didn't know. And a lot of us, we didn't keep the Shabbat. We didn't know. It wasn't taught to us. It was Shabbat ceremonial. You don't have to keep it. I mean, just all of that. So we didn't. That's ignorance. When it becomes exceeding sinful is because you know what the law says, but you break it anyway. Now it becomes exceeding sinful. Now you're exceeding it because you know better. And we usually say that, right? When you know better, if I know better, I'm going to do better. If I know better. Now, if I don't know, if I'm in ignorance, that's totally different. But now that I know, I can't keep doing it. That's why he told the woman, I'm not going to condemn you to death. I ain't stoning you. I'm not going to condemn you to death. Just don't do it again. And that's it. Just don't. You can't. When it becomes exceeding sinful, it's because it's repetitive. You just keep doing it. You just keep. Now it's exceeding sinful. Now notice what he said in verse number 14. For we know that the law, is what? Spiritual. So you're telling me the law is spiritual, but then you go to Galatians and it says we're not under the law. Wait a minute, but the law is spiritual, but we're not under the law. Wait a minute, Shaul, I'm getting confused here now. I'm getting confused. And that's why I said earlier when in 16 and 17, Galatians 5, 16 and 17, there's two polar things that he's talking about, right? And we have to see that. Those two polar things he's talking about is the Ruach and the flesh. Those are the things I'm talking about here. So when he talks about walk after the Ruach, we know that the law is spiritual. The law is holy. He says the law is holy. The commandment holy, just and good. He says we know that the law is spiritual. But he goes on to say, but I am carnal, sold under sin. So here again, you got these two paradoxes, right? You got the Ruach and you got the flesh. Carnal, that's what he's talking about. You're talking about the flesh. So you got the Ruach and the flesh. So we have to continue to keep that in our forefront. Now I want to go down. I want to go down to verse number 19, Romans 7:19. For the good that I would do, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Okay, Paul, we're going around in circles now. We're going around in circles, and sometimes you experience this in your life. You keep reading this, you're going to find out, yeah, I experienced that too. Now, if I do that, I would not. It is no more I that do it, but what? Sin that. Where does the sin dwell in you? Remember now we're talking in the flesh. In the flesh, exactly. Sin dwells in the flesh. That's why he's saying you can't be carnal. You can't be fleshly minded. You can't do that. That's where sin is. And so he's saying here, now if I do that, I would not. It is no more I that do it, but it's the sin that dwelleth in me. So I can't follow. If I know my flesh wants to break commandments and the law, I can't keep doing that. I can't mind that. I got to do something different. I got to change because it becomes exceeding sinful. Because I keep doing the same thing over. Are you in a rut? You keep doing the same thing over? You don't have to. You have to get out. I have to be able to think more about the Ruach, and the law is spiritual, and I have to see the spirituality of it. Because we have to remember, he gave it to Yasharel. He says, people are going to look at you and say, man, y'all wise and understanding people. I mean, y'all, but see, people don't look at us like that. They look at us like notorious criminals. And they shouldn't. They shouldn't look at you like that. They shouldn't look at our sons as, yeah, we better build bigger prisons for him. He's going to be 14 pretty soon. We just pipeline straight to the... They shouldn't look at us like that. We can't give in to that. No, I know the structure of my house. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know the example I'm supposed to have. I know I'm supposed to teach them. In fact, sometimes I want to start all over. I want to start all over because I know more now. I know I know things now that I didn't know before, especially my responsibilities, especially raising kids and sons. And I want to start over, but I can't. Ain't no starting over. So we have to admonish, and we have to teach, and we have to let families know your role, know your responsibility, know what you're supposed to be doing. Okay? So we have to look at what he's talking about here. Notice what he says after he says, it's sin that dwelleth in me, verse number 21. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. Because we're still in this sinful flesh. And if I let my flesh have its way, I'm going to sin. I'm a sin. If I let flesh have, I'm going to cater to the flesh. He even told us, he says in another place, he says, abstain from all appearance of evil. He says that. And so, and then I should know what my weaknesses are. Because Satan knows. Because he watches you. He sees what challenge you flipping through. They got AI now. They follow your phone. Everything on your phone. With my phone, I can speak and say something, and I can go home, open up my phone, and boom. They're giving me advertising. They're giving me stuff. And it's right there. It's AI. It's right there. So I have to, he tells us that we should not be ignorant of Satan's what? I know what they're trying to do. If I know that there's things that I can think of and say and everything, and then it pops up, uh-oh. I got to change the way I think. I got to change my speech. I got to change the way I live. Because you see some folks and they get all this junk popping up. Oh, I don't know where all that comes. Oh, man, I'm so embarrassed. I don't know where that. Probably because you was traveling down some of those avenues before, and they seen you, and so they pop that stuff back up, and it comes up on your. We cannot be ignorant of his devices, and so things are tightening up because the things that I say and the things that I do can pop back up. And it's just Abba Yah getting y'all ready. Y'all think they got AI. What do you think Abba Yah's got? He said, my eyes are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. He says, I know your thoughts as they come into you. I already know them. So we're starting to see all this AI and all this stuff, but they don't know more than Abba Yah. All knowledge and wisdom comes from him. So every time they get new discoveries and they're able to learn and advance and technology, Yah already knows that. He already knows that. Knowledge and wisdom comes from him. It's just that the tool and how they use it, when we should be using it for our good, they'll use it for evil. We use it to generate life. They'll use it to kill you. You know, same knowledge, same wisdom. So it's how it's being used. So listen to what Shaul says. Wait a minute now. I've discovered something. I found a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of Elohim after the inward man. Listen to what he says here. But I see, and this is verse number 23, but I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind. Remember, he says, the flesh lusts against the ruach lusts against the flesh, and they're contrary to one another. He says, I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin. And where's the law of sin at? It's in my members. It's in my flesh. The law of sin is in your flesh. That's why, and he goes on to say, O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? He knew he was going to die because sin is going to kill you. Sin is in the body. Sin is in the flesh. And he says, who's going to deliver me from this? I want to get out of this body. And we do have, if you're faithful and you make it, you got a new body. And you won't have to, the struggles you have now, you don't have to worry about them. You won't have to worry about, man, when I would do good, evil's present with me. Because that new body you have ain't going to have, it's not going to be made like this, fashioned after sin. It's not going to be made like this. So we won't have that constant on this shoulder. This one's telling me to do good. This one's telling me to do evil. Y'all know how they do that? You got your good conscience, your evil conscience. They fighting, warring against one another. In that new body, we won't have to worry about that. As long as we're in the flesh, if I don't walk after the Spirit and mind the things of the Spirit, I'm going to sin. I'm going to sin. Because the law of sin, it's in my members. And that's why you have to pay attention every day. Shaul says, I die daily. Hey, I don't know about y'all. I die daily. I'm fighting on this thing. I'm fighting on every front. Toe to toe. Bob and weave. Bob and weave. Every day. I got to fight because I know that as soon as I relax and take my ease, because he says, woe unto them that are ease in Zion. Soon as I take my ease, here comes this flesh. Just waiting to, I got you. That's what the flesh wants to do. It wants to get you and cause you to sin against Abba Yah. So he says, now you got the ruach here, you got the flesh here, and they're fighting against one another. And that's why Shaul says, man, I learned something. I discovered, man, because see, Shaul thought, Now, Shaul wasn't your ordinary super saint. Now, he was a Pharisee of Pharisee, right? He said, I'm a Pharisee of Pharisee. He sat on the Sanhedrin. I mean, as touching the law, he said, I'm blameless. As touching the law, you can't convict me of no sin because I have not committed any sins against the law. So he talks about himself. But then after his regeneration, he's saying, I discovered something. I discovered something in my memory. Because, see, sometimes when we get saved, we think it's all over. The fight's over. No, he says, man, I discovered something in my flesh because when I want to do good, man, evil is present. And sometimes we give in to the evil. And we just speak things off the top of our head, and we're injurious to one another, which means we injure one another. And we go on and drink our lemonade like nothing happened. Because when you injure your brother or your sister, and you shed that, because it even talks about shedding innocent blood, and you are guilty of that, but you go on and act like ain't nothing happened. We act like we didn't sin. But when I follow after the Ruach, so when we look at following after the Ruach, so let's go back to Galatians, and we were at 5 and 18. Because he says, but if ye be led of the Ruach, ye are not under the law. Now, what is he talking about here? You're not under the law of sin, which is in the members. Because he told us that in Romans. He said, I seen another law in my members, and it's warring against me. And he said, it's trying to bring me under subjection. Well, let's read it again. Let's look at Romans 7 and 23. We'll come back here. Romans 7:23. But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. So there is a law of sin. And he even goes on in verse number 25, because verse 24, he says, who's going to deliver me from the body of this death? Because he knew he's going to have to die because sin brings death. Who's going to deliver me from this? Well, we got to wait for the resurrection. And you better hope you in the, what he said in Revelation, you better hope you're in the first resurrection. Where the second death ain't got no power over you. Better hope you're in that one. And then verse number 25, I thank Elohim through Yahushua Mashiach, our Adonai. So then with the mind, I myself serve the law of Elohim. But with the flesh, the law of sin. So even in this verse, he talks about two laws. So when I go and I'm reading Shaul, I have to understand which one are you talking about? I can't just say the law of Elohim. See, I ain't under the law of Elohim. What do you mean? The law is spiritual. If you're walking after the Spirit, the law is spiritual. But when he says we're not under the law, if I do the things of the Ruach, I'm not subject and I won't be under captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. Okay, so that's what he says. Let's go back to Galatians chapter 5 and verse number 17 and 18. But 18, but if ye be led of the Ruach, ye are not under the law of sin, which is in your members. If you're led by the Ruach. Because if I'm led by the Ruach, I'm going to mind the things of the Ruach. I'm going to mind the things of Yahusha. Yahusha says, I do always those things that please his Father. Yahusha, it says of Yahusha, who knew no sin, neither was any guile found in his mouth. And he is the example for us that we should follow in his steps. That's our example. And he kept Torah. He kept the instructions. Well, he couldn't help. He was the instructions. If you want to see the instructions in human flesh, they had it in human flesh. The instructions of Elohim, the Torah, the instruction was made flesh and dwelt among us. They handled the word of life. We handled him, man. We ate with him. We slept with him. We talked with him. We walked with him, man. It just blew his mind. Oh, man, this was the word of life. This was everything that Yahuwah talked about from even from Genesis all the way down. It became flesh. man, it just kind of blew his mind, And that's why Shaul says, I don't care what I have, whatever, as long as I know the Mashiach. That's what he says. I want to know the Mashiach, because if you know the Mashiach, it'll just blow your mind, because of all that Abba Yahuwah said and did, and then he wrote it in flesh and was on display. And that's our example. That's who we have to follow after. And we see his mercy and his grace right now, his compassion. That's what we see. Because when he returns, you ain't going to see that compassion. You ain't going to see that. You're going to see the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see judgment. And he even says, whoever it is says that I'm not going to rule over them, bring them here. Slay them in front of me. He didn't slay them. He told his people, y'all slay them in front of me. You don't want me to rule over you? Come on. That's going to be an altar call. Because you're going to have to give your own head. Because you don't want him to rule over you. Now, remember now, a lot of people, they're going to mourn when they see him. And there's going to be a lot of people say, oh, I ain't living on his kingdom. Okay. That's all right. You're right. You ain't going to live under his kingdom. You're right. Because you ain't going to live. Because he is going to reign for 1,000 years on this present earth where we stand right now. But, okay, now, so he goes through the works of the flesh, or the law of sin, which is in your members. He goes through that. Now, the works of the flesh are manifested, and it's manifested through your flesh and through your deeds. This is the law of sin that is in your members. What's the law of sin in my members? Adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, all that in the law of sin in my memory. Yeah, all of that. That's why he says, I got a mind and spirit, because he's going to give us some other things here too. Strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of Elohim, which is eternal life. You will not inherit eternal life if you're following the law of sin, which is in your members. The law of sin, which is in your members, you can't do it. That's why he says you don't mind the things of the flesh. This is what's in your flesh. Once I look at all this and I see, you mean all this is in my flesh? Oh, man. Isn't that ugly? That's ugly. When you look at all that, I mean, that's really ugly. It's anti-Yah. Because that's not, our Elohim is such, he dwells in such a bright light. You can't put no sin on, he can't even be tempted. He's just pure. Holiness, or Kodesh, being set, I'm just pure. He dwells in a light that no man can approach unto. All of this stuff, this flesh and the workings of the flesh, it's so beneath him. He can't even, sometimes y'all probably look at us, I don't even understand why y'all do that. But he sent his son in the likeness of what? Sinful flesh and for sin. That he might do what? Condemn sin where? In the flesh. Because we kept saying, I can't. You can. I can't. Yes, you can. I can't. So he sends his son. He sent his son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, he condemned sin in flesh. Because Yahusha was obedient unto the Most High, El Elyon, Yahuwah, all the days of his life. And that's what we have to do, is just be obedient to him. He says to obey is better than sacrifice. I'd rather just be obedient. Obey my voice. Obey my voice. And it's not that hard, because Yahuwah said, his commandments ain't grievous. It's only grievous when you want to fulfill the lust of the flesh. When I want to do my own thing, and I want to feel the lust of the flesh, then it becomes grievous. Oh, man, that law's so heavy. No, it's not. If you want to be like Yahusha, it's not heavy. And they always talk about, I want to be like Yahusha, I want to be like you. his life is on display right before us. He was Torah in the flesh. So all of these things, he says, those who do such things, you're not going to inherit eternal life. The kingdom of Allah, you're just not going to get it. Now, he says, but the fruit of, verse number 20, but the fruit of the Ruach, before we go into this, let's go to Matthew chapter 7 and verse number 15. Matthew 7:15, I'm going to read down a little bit, and then we're going to go back to Galatians. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Notice now, fruits. Fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. Verse number 18, a good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. And he says, every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. So if you can't bring forth good fruit, what kind of tree are you? It says it right here, right? A corrupt tree. If you can't bring forth good fruit, you are a corrupt tree. Because a corrupt tree cannot bring forth good fruit, and a good tree will not bring forth evil fruit. So you're going to know the tree by the fruit that it bears. And so when we see certain works and what certain people do, and then they want to tell you that they're a good tree, but your fruit is corrupt. Oh, no, I'm a good, quit being judgmental. But I'm looking at your fruit. It's your fruit that brings judgment on the type of tree that you are. He says it right here. We got to read it again. Verse number 17. Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. It's pretty self-explanatory. It should be anyway. If I want to know what kind of tree you are, I'm just going to watch. I'm going to observe. I'm going to see what kind of fruit you bring forth. It ain't so much of talking about, talking at the big gate and everything. Oh, I'm going to see your fruit. Because a good tree is going to bring forth good fruit. A corrupt tree is going to bring forth evil fruit. You can't mix the two. I can't plant an orange tree and then I wanted apples. Well, you're getting oranges, but I wanted apples. Well, you got the wrong tree. Well, I thought I planted an apple tree, but you got oranges. And so you can't, whatever the tree is, that's the type of fruit that you're going to produce. And that's why he had to take Gentiles and graft them into Yasharel, which Yasharel is supposed to be the good tree because Yasharel is supposed to be the light of the world, right? He says other nations, remember we read that at the top? Other nations are going to look at you and say, man, y'all wise and understanding people. So what he tries to do is he tries to graft them into that tree. The only thing about Yasharel is it's a sad story. It's a sad story when you look at Yasharel. And a lot of it now is just out of ignorance because they don't know. But when you tell them, they don't even consider. But let's go back to Galatians, right? Because I'm going to close up here, unless there's some questions or comments. Galatians 5 and verse number 22. Galatians 5:22. As we come into a close, and let me know if you got any questions. But the fruit of the Ruach, Remember now, Yahusha talked about the trees, right? The good tree and the corrupt tree. So a good tree is going to bear what fruit? Good fruit. So it says here, but the fruit of the Ruach is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Those are good fruit that if you are a good tree, you're bringing forth good fruit because it's of the Ruach. It's the Ruach that is doing it. That's why he says you have to walk after the Ruach. So if I'm walking after the Ruach and I'm not minding the things of the flesh, the fruit that I'm going to produce is I'm going to produce love. And sometimes that's hard for, and that's why he said the two greatest commandments is love Yahuwah Elohim with all thy heart, mind, body, soul, strength. Him only shalt thou serve, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Because one of the hardest things for people to do is love. And I'm not talking about infatuation or lust. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about what they call it, the Greeks and Romans call it the agape, the love of Yah. If I have the love of Yah, I have the love for his people. Because I can't love Yah and not love his people. Yeah. How am I going, oh, Yah, I love you. I hate that one. You ain't got nothing to do. And we just start running folks down. But then you turn around and say you love Yah. He says, how can you love me who you haven't seen? And you can't love your brother. And you see him every day. It don't make sense. So you can't say that you love Yah and you don't love your brother. In fact, he says if you hate your brother, you're a murderer. So for us, none of us should have any hatred in our heart. I can't even function under hatred. Even folks that don't love me, I can't. I'm not going to recompense unto them I can't do that. Not if I'm bearing fruit of love. Man, they take advantage of you, man. Oh, you should hear how they talk about you behind you. Oh, man, you ought to be glad they ain't got knives. Because don't turn your back now. You need to do this. If I'm bearing a fruit of love, if I love Yah, I have to love my brother. I have to. Now, don't be crazy. You know what I mean? You love them because he said you love your enemy. That don't mean you showing up at their house every day. You know? And that don't mean you're going into dark corners and you know if they had the chance, they cutting your throat. You know? Doesn't mean that. It just means that, hey, I'm not going to do no ill towards you. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to lie and wait. You just tell me. When he comes out, you just tell me. I ain't lying and wait. I ain't going to do that. If I love Yah, I love you. So you look at these fruits, love, and then joy is a fruit. And sometimes I wonder, man, these trees ain't got no joy fruit on them. Because it don't seem like folks got joy. Now, some of us, that's a fruit I can produce is joy, man. I'm happy every day. You got something like that. You know, they might be peaking more. What are you getting off of your tree? Man, I don't know. This season, man, a lot of joy fruit is on the tree. Just a lot of joy. And, joy coming in the morning, man. And sometimes, man, I'm so tired of crying and weeping and everything. I want some joy. I want some joy. I want to feel good. I want some joy sometime. So we got joy is a fruit. Shalom. Now, shalom should be in the home. That's where it starts. Because if you ain't got peace in the home, how you think you're going to bring peace here? Shalom, when we say shalom and peace amongst us and shalom and everything, it should be practiced in my home. If my home is hectic and the sword out all the time, and folks kill, it's a bloodbath in there. Don't go up in there. It's a bloodbath. What do you think you're going to bring when we come together? All that stuff is coming with you because a tree is known by the fruit that it bears. So you can hide sometimes, but you ain't going to be able to hide all the time. And with Abba Yah, you ain't hiding at all. Because he now we can, and you heard this saying before, fake it till you make it. And a lot of times we can fake it because we're trying to make it. Abba Yah don't want you faking. He wants you doing. And if I'm coming up short on this fruit. I'm coming short, long suffering, because that's a fruit. We won't be able to go through all these because my time is up, but just kind of mention some of these as we go through. But long suffering, and many of us, it's very difficult to suffer. We don't, just be honest. We don't like to suffer. We really don't like to suffer. And sometimes we look at our lives and where we come from. Haven't we suffered enough? But that's a fruit, because there's certain situations and certain people you have to be long-suffering. You got to have that fruit. In order for us to be together as people in a community and everything, you got to have some long-suffering. You got to have some patience for folks. You can't be a short fuse, and you got to deal with people. Those who have to deal with people in the workplace and everything, you short fuse all the time, folks are going to avoid you. They see you coming. They trying to avoid you. If you short fuse, or biting your heads off, oh, here they come. I mean, if somebody's saying that about me, I want it to be out of joy or something. Oh, here he comes. That's how I want it to be. I don't want it to be like, here he comes, let's get out of the way. Long-suffering, gentleness. And I can't call you gentlemen if you ain't gentle. Right? Because they like to call them ladies and gentlemen. I ain't calling you gentlemen, you ain't gentle. You know, and you know what? You know who can tell the story on us better than anybody else? And that's the ones we live with. The ones we live with, man, especially your spouse, or if you ain't married, whoever you live with. And I'm not into this, just get together with somebody and live. And I don't think that's not in Torah. But whoever you live in that house and your spouse, they should be able to write a book on you. They'll be able to tell you. And sometimes I might be saying something, and one spouse is thinking, he don't know. He don't know. He just talking, but he don't know. He don't know what's going on at home. Because I'm trying to build folks up and everything, and if he only knew. Because the person you live with is the one that knows you better than anybody else, because they live with you in the same house with you day and night, night and day, and they know who you are. So it got to be some gentleness, goodness. Got to be good sometime. And I mean, for us, we should be able to rattle these things off. I don't know about y'all, but I think about these things. I want to know what kind of fruit I'm bearing. So I think about these things, especially when I'm dealing with people. And sometimes I think, I wonder what they're going to say about me. If y'all had to give a grade on me or do a report and everything, sometimes I wonder what would they say about me? That's why I'm trying to bear the fruit. I'm trying to bear the fruit and treat everybody. I don't want to be partial to nobody. I don't want nobody to say what he did, other. No, I want to bear the fruit, and you should be the same way. You want to bear the fruit because you are writing a book on yourself. We all got a book, and it's going to be in our book. And in the last day, it says he's going to open up the book. So when he opens up the book, what is he going to see? What is he going to see about you? So there got to be some faith. Now, this is a key, because without faith, it's impossible. He says, without faith, it's impossible to please me. For he that cometh to Elohim must believe that he is. First thing, you got to believe Elohim is. You got to believe Yahweh is. He just is. He just is. And you have to believe that he is, and you have to diligently seek him, which means he don't want you to seek him one time. Man, I saw him last year. He ain't talking about, did you seek me 10 years ago? No, diligently seek me is every day. I'm seeking him every day. I'm trying to get closer to him every day. I want to grow in knowledge and wisdom every day. I want to be wise every day. I want my neighbors in my neighborhood to look at my house and say, man, those are some wise and understanding people. Now, we had the cops there before, and I'm wondering about my neighbor. Because I got to be examined. Here, the cops up here. But, you know, you want people to look at you and say, man, that's a wise and understanding people. You know, and I know we got incidents. I mean, we ain't perfect yet. There's things we do. I mean, we striving for it. We're striving, because that's what Shaul talked about when he talked about striving for that mark. You know, trying to hit that mark. I'm trying to get there. I might not be there yet, but I'm trying to get there. And so faith, meekness, and meekness is not a weakness, but meekness and temperance. You have to be in control of yourself. People who lose control and say, I couldn't help it. I just lost control. I just flew off the handle. Well, you need some bear some fruit of temperance. And you got to. In fact, he said those who strive for the mastery. Even Shaul said that, right? Those who strive for the mastery must be what? He said those who strive for the mastery must be temperate in all things. You have to be temperate in all things if you're striving for the mastery. And we should all be striving for the mastery. So we should have temperance. We should have patience, long-suffering with one another. I mean, if anybody knows how to do it, it ought to be us, because we got the Ruach HaKodesh and we're bearing the fruit. And so if anybody knows how to do it, it should be us. And so as we reach out, I'm coming to an end here, as we reach out to those in the community, and the weather warms up and we go out and we start visiting people and stuff, we should be the ones they say, man, that's a wise and understanding people. That's them. I want to go there. I want to go there. And when they come around here, they should see the fruit, bear the fruit. They should feel the love, the long-suffering, temperance, faith. They should feel when they come around here. Y'all got some joy. I know y'all got joy. I can feel it up in here. A lot of energy up here. That's the Ruach HaKodesh. You might call it energy, but it's the Ruach HaKodesh. All right, any questions, comments? Any questions or comments out there? No? Okay, all right, so we're going to bring this to a close. We thank you for coming. We do have a couple platforms that are out there that you can contribute to the ministry here. And I just don't know, Yasharel, sometimes they want to keep everybody in business, but when it comes to his ministry, the Most High Yah, his ministry, when it comes to that, I ain't giving nothing. Really? And I ain't talking about those who are faithful. I'm not talking about them. But there's some people that feel like, you know, and I love, Bishop Boyd has some wisdom. He had wisdom. And sometimes I hear a lot of things he say, it still echoes in my ear. He says, I ain't talking about you unless it's you. And if it ain't you, I ain't talking about you. But we got some folks that feel like, you know, they don't have to give anything. And he has admonished Yasharel, and we're supposed to be the light of the world, to where in order to keep his ministry and keep his and I'm not going to teach on this, but not tonight, but in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and how Shaul brought out Torah and the law. And he said, it is written in the law of Moses, thou shalt not muzzle the mouth of the ox that treadeth out the corn. And then he goes on and says, does Elohim take care of oxen? Because when you look at that, when people say, you know, don't muzzle the mouth of the ox that treadeth out the corn, man, you talking about farming and the oxen and you know, they're out there working, and you don't want to muzzle them because they got to breathe and those big nostrils, and you don't get too close to them nostrils. They might suck you up in there. I mean, they just breathe, they're working and everything. You don't want to cover that up. Let them work, you know. And so people think, well, he's talking about oxen and farming and things like. But then he goes on, or saith he it altogether for our sakes? And this is what Shaul's telling the people. Do you think that law that was given to Yasharel, don't muzzle the ox as he treadeth out the corn. Do you think that was just given to them, or do you think that was for our sakes? And then he goes on to say uh, that he that ploweth, for our sakes, no doubt, this was written. So a lot of times we have to look at what was written there, and so when he says, because sometimes Yasharel had to be upbraided because they think that they can keep everybody else in business, but they don't want to keep the house of Yah. And when I say the house of Yah, I'm speaking rhetorically around the world and everything, because it was pressed upon Yasharel to take care of his work, the work he's doing, and everything like that. And I just say that so that we got people who are listening. And we do have a couple of platforms that you can give unto. One is Vanco and one is Givelify. But we'll talk more about that later sometime. All right. We thank you for coming in, everybody that is here. We say shalom, shalom. Come on back on the Shabbat. Come on back.